VM, what's that over there? It's a lion. We are with the lions. Herbert found them, and they are in exactly the same place that they were the last time I saw them at this time yesterday. There's a pan off to the right-hand side. That's one of the males, Tino, and he, of course, is the consort of one of the females. The rest of the pride is over there. And they're all lying down next to this water where they have been for the last 24 hours or so. This is not a pride of lions that likes to overexert itself by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, they like to have a very relaxing time of it. Now we'll try and get a little bit closer to those cubs, assess their physical condition, find out if they are recovering from their mange or if it is getting worse. They remain, to my mind, by far the cutest animals out here in the wild. Clay, we don't know the answer to your question, to be honest. You've said, what causes a mange breakout? How does it thrive? Well, it is spread from one animal to the other by direct contact. And it's caused by a little mite that digs into the skin. And it's the same mite that causes this human skin condition called scabies, which is a very sort of unpleasant situation where, you know, if you're a human being with scabies, you get these kind of extremely crusty, itchy pieces of skin, and the same thing happens to the lions, and eventually it can actually kill them. But it's by no means a death sentence. Why it's out here now and why it has, why there's an outbreak now, I think it's too much of a coincidence to say that, you know, there's a drought at the same time and it's purely coincidence. I think there's something to do with the drought, but I don't know exactly why it should be the case. Right, that fellow, oh, there we go, is now asleep. That's quite a nice shot, that. Darlene, a very good question from you. You want to know how mange goes about killing an animal. Well, again, it's difficult to say. I think what happens in young and infirm animals is that they eventually scratch all the hair off themselves. And when that happens, they become cold, they become weaker, it becomes difficult for them to move around and feed because they're so obsessed by this tremendous skin irritation, and I think that eventually probably creates secondary infections. I don't know that the mite itself actually would ever kill an animal, but I think it probably creates a situation of weakness, immune suppression, and then secondary infections and other parasites will eventually kill the animal. I think that's how it works. There's another female in there. Let's try and move around a little bit and see if we can't get a slightly better view as the red-chested cuckoo calls in the background. And yes, Dayton, I think that you've made another good guess. You say, is it possible for an animal to contract mange or a predator to contract mange from eating an infected prey species? I think yes, absolutely that's possible. I don't see why it wouldn't be. I think I don't know where the Birmingham boy got it from. We'll just have a quick look here. I don't know where that original Birmingham boy got his mange from, but I think he's the one that's given it to everyone else. And we think it was Tino, but we stand to correction there. So it may have been this fellow himself that we're looking at. He doesn't look particularly concerned about it, does he, VM? No. He looks particularly disinterested, in fact. That is a picture of absolute blissful peace, everybody. And just to the right-hand side of him, we could just see the top of the female's body. And he will only move when she moves. The only reason he actually sat up was because she sort of started to move around a little. Now let's see if we can see the rest of the pride. And try not to fall into this pan as we go past. There we go, we've made it. Now, I don't know how long we're going to spend with these chaps. It very much will depend on you, everybody. But I think if they're not doing too much, then we probably won't sit here for too long. But here in the drainage are 3 little cubs. Let's try and assess their condition. There we go. 1, 2, 3. There, that slightly worrying scratching is beginning on a seemingly unaffected one. And always behind the elbow to start with. One looks all right. Doesn't seem to have any patches. And then what we need to check is that one there, because I think that one, if there is a lion that is, if there is a cub amongst this group that's suffering a little, it's probably this one. No, maybe not. Maybe just having a bit of a clean. No, that's definitely a mangy foot. Yeah. This is a worrying, I must say, everybody. Like I said yesterday, not a death sentence necessarily. They are eating very well, so they have the best possible chance of surviving this. Hello, Leilani in California. You're wondering at what point these little lions will become adults. She's looking there at the red-chested cuckoo. They become adults, Leilani, when they are, well, I suppose the females reach sexual maturity at about 2.5 years, and they can mate from then and have cubs. There's the bird, the red-chested cuckoo. And the males, well, yeah, that's a wonderful picture of a red-chested cuckoo. Oh, that's wonderful. Leilani, the males reach sexual maturity a bit later, about 3.5, but they won't mate until they're probably 6 normally, when they take over a pride. But they'd be considered adults from 3.5, or 3 even. Isn't that cool? Now that one, if I'm not mistaken, this bird parasitizes starlings. I'm just going to quickly check that. Which means it'll be looking for Birchall starlings, I think, probably specifically, which are roughly the same size. Oh, interesting. It says primarily live at Cape Robin chat, but you don't get the Cape Robin here. But about 15 other species. I'll just check what those are. Cape Robin chat. Well, there are no Cape Robin chats here, so here we go. Hosts: thrushes, robins, wagtails, white-throated robin, bearded scrub robin. It could easily be, I'm just reading this, of course, from my bird app. It probably then is the white-browed scrub robin that red-chested cuckoo is going to parasitize. No starlings, interestingly. A new scar. Yes, look at that. That's a scratch. That's interesting. A new scratch. Quite possibly from the male. There was quite a lot of conflict yesterday. Let's see if he doesn't get up and follow her. Quite a lot of argy-bargy there was yesterday going on. Every time one of the males came near one of the other males, he got very upset. But I don't see the other male here. Still the cuckoo calls. I believe Taylor tried desperately to get that cuckoo on screen yesterday. But they are very elusive. Yeah, that licking is definitely goes well beyond cleaning, I'm afraid. That is now full-blown scratching as far as I'm concerned. Shame. All right, let's move around there a little bit. Nia, you're in Illinois and wondering about FIV, feline immunovirus, which is much the same as human immunovirus, but for cats. And you're also wondering about TB and how much there is around of each disease. FIV, I've heard, is not quite as dire as the situation is with the human immunovirus, so it doesn't seem to do quite as much damage, although my mother's house cat died of FIV. She was very upset. But tuberculosis, you'll probably find, especially given the amount of buffalo that these lions eat, I think you'll find that TB is rife amongst them. But because they are not immune compromised at the moment with things like FIV, they are actually okay. You'll find it doesn't express and doesn't cause a problem unless they don't eat enough, unless they really struggle to find sufficient to eat. Now, we're quite close to these lions. There's one just behind the bush here, so I need to be a little bit careful. We'll just stop here for a while and let her get used to us. Not that she's likely to react at all, but if I do go any further forward, I'm going to make a loud crunching noise. Still trying to suckle, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lionesses. So the other male and the other female, look at that, probably away with each other. You might just be able to hear the little cub calling. Isn't that a ridiculous sleeping position? That's the chin spot batis calling. She is very comfortable having a bit of a suckle. Can we get in close on the foot on the tree there, then? No, not really, because I haven't parked you properly. Hello, Maggie. We're watching that lioness with her claws stuck in the tree, and you're wondering if they can climb trees. They're highly adept tree climbers, Maggie. They're able to climb trees very well, not quite as elegantly as leopards, but that's just a function of the fact that they're much heavier. But they can climb. I've seen them sleeping in trees the same way that leopards do. They don't do it as often. Remember, a leopard spends most of its time in a tree, A, for security, and B, to stash its kills. And there's no real reason for a lion to do either, because very little is going to try and steal a kill from a lion. And also, they just are very confident they don't need to worry about anything attacking them. So I don't think that there's any kind of need for them to climb as much as leopards, and so that's why they don't. Yeah, all of these cubs are now looking a bit mangy. Shame. Anyway, that's nature. Oh, look. Isn't that wonderful? And exactly like when Jamie had amber eyes doing that to one of the cubs. That's an aunt, that's not a mother. She's not one of the mothers, but she's taking on the responsibility of being affectionate to the little ones. She's enjoying the company of the little cub and giving it a little hug. That's very sweet. And back to chewing the mange off her foot. It's obviously very, very itchy. I think what also happens with this mange is that these animals become consumed by dealing with the itch. They're unable to do anything else. See, the cubs are not playing. I mean, look, they're getting a little bit old now for too much playing. But I wonder if a lot of their playtime is now being taken up with scratching and licking and biting. And Louise says they were playing a lot yesterday afternoon, so maybe I'm talking rubbish, which I hope I am in this particular case. One of the most common questions we're asked out here is about the role of males in the upbringing and protection of youngsters. And it's because I think we as human beings are so, well, I mean, we have almost a unique relationship with our fathers. Some of the birds have a very similar relationship, I think, but very few mammals have the same kind of relationship with their fathers. And Marlene, you're wondering about male lions and how they, if they're affectionate with the youngsters and if they protect them. The short answer is no on both counts. Yes, they can be affectionate, but they will seldom approach the cubs where the mothers do. If the cubs approach the males, which sometimes they do, the male, it's very sweet to watch. The male often sort of just lies there, sort of looking like a slightly irritated but patient father, and then he might give him a bit of a swat and tell him to go away. But yes, then there is, and it's always such a treat to see that, because it doesn't happen all the time. It's not very common. Do they protect them? Yes, indirectly they do protect them, because they protect the territory from marauding other males, which would almost certainly kill these cubs. Then yes, what happens is that I suppose you could say they protect them. Do they act as security? I mean, is that male that we saw lying around here in order to look after these cubs? Absolutely not. Would they share meat with the cubs? Absolutely not. So they play a very different fathering role compared with, say, human fathers do. It is a fascinating question, that, and one that the closer I think you get to us, up the sort of, I guess you call it the evolutionary ladder, although it's a very poor way of putting it. In other words, the primates, the great apes, tend to have a much more active parental role, although it's really not a big one, the fathers. They very seldom have a huge role at all, and it's really in the birds where you find the greatest involvement of fathers in the upbringing of the youngsters. And it's no coincidence, of course, that birds lay eggs. They don't get pregnant, which means the males can have a much more active role from the beginning. So that's quite interesting. Let's head across to Byron and find out if his dogs have crossed the boundary. I suspect we'd be heading there a lot faster if they had, but he'll tell you if they're getting close. Their daily sleep of 20 hours or so. They have done almost nothing since I last saw you. Bar harassed this poor female there, who seems to be still lactating. She's probably the mother of the very little ones. I've done a little bit more of an assessment of the mange situation. It's not good. And it's going to be difficult to watch if it does just start to progress like it did with the Styx Pride. I think this is the worst affected one there on our left. Hello, Shargirl. You're a new viewer, and it's lovely to have you with us. Thank you for talking to us, and thank you for getting hold of us, and thank you for watching. And please tell everybody you know about it, even people you don't know. Just tell them about Safari Live. Shargirl, you want to know if veterinarians or would ever get involved in a situation like that, if a disease became rampant? And the short answer is, in an area like this, it's almost impossible because of the size. We're part of an 8.5 million acre or 3.5 million hectare wilderness, and that means disease travels as freely as the animals travel around here. So were we to bring a vet in to fix this mange problem in the Pride, they'd probably pick it up again almost straight away from living in this area. But the other thing to say is that because it's a wilderness area, we try and have as little effect as possible on the animals. So we try not to interfere with nature. Now, yesterday we had a question about whether or not lions are endangered, and surely with an endangered species like this, we should be helping them. Well, they're not officially classed as endangered. There are certainly arguments for classing lions as endangered, but in South Africa, the Southern African lion, which is what we're looking at here, has a very stable population that goes into the Kruger, it goes north into Zimbabwe and east into Mozambique. They have a stable population here, and that means that we won't get involved. If there were wild dogs, for example, and they had rabies, or there was an outbreak of rabies, it is entirely possible that we would try and inoculate them against that disease, and that, of course, is because wild dogs are severely, severely endangered. There are probably fewer than 3,000 left. We don't know how many lions there are left. We do know for sure that their numbers are dwindling and that they are threatened, absolutely. But in this particular part of the world, they have a stable population. Now, if all of these cubs die, which is possible, we don't think it's going to happen, but it is possible from the mangy disease that they've got, it is unlikely that that would change the lion population much, because these females will come into estrus almost straight away. They'll breed again, and 3 months later we'll have more cubs. Now, that's a fairly heartless way of looking at things, but sometimes we have to be able to look at things like that, because 90% of the time when we as humans get involved in natural systems, we make a mess. We create tragedy, we create a problem. And that's why, for me, although it is really difficult to watch lions and any other animals suffering from any kind of disease, it is often the best approach just to let things be, because nature has a way of sorting itself out. So please do understand that in the next few months, while we're watching these lions, if they do start to get sicker, and if they do start to lose all their hair, like the Styx Pride cubs did, it is not because we are being callous or cold-hearted about it that we aren't doing anything. It's because we truly believe that the best approach here is to let things take their course. So don't for one second think that you are sort of watching in sadness alone. It will be us with you. High movement there. You can see that she's turned round. And yes, Anna-Marie, as they get older, I do think that their chances of survival will get much higher. That said, the Styx Pride cubs, which all died, they were all older than this, or certainly, no, they weren't all older, but there was a cohort of them that were probably a good 2 months older than the oldest cubs here, and they all passed on. But they weren't eating. Their mothers seemed to be really struggling to provide for them. They seem to be always hungry. These guys are eating almost every night. And that's going to make a huge difference to their ability to fight the disease off. All right, everybody, I think that we should pack it up here. I think we should go and spend a little bit, or the last hour or so of the drive, out looking for one or two other things, just simply because these lions have settled for the day, and I think it's probably a nice idea for us to go off and see what else we can see. Okay, we'll come back here during the course of the afternoon and see what they're doing. That's just simply because they're not going to do much. Right, here we go. We're now going to try and extricate ourselves from here. We'll go out. Of course, have a spare tyre on Jigger at the moment. Jigger's got a small problem with carrying a spare tyre. Lazy old bat that she is. So we don't really want to pop a tyre and call what Wiem terms Conno roadside assist. We don't want to call that in the middle of a lion sighting. Do we, Wiem? No. Conno would enjoy it, yes. Lorena, a very nice point from you. You say you understand what I'm saying about letting nature take its course, but you say nature doesn't always work. Species go extinct every day. Let's have one last look at this male lion while I answer this query, because it's a good one. Lorena, who's to say that... Oh, sorry, quickly, Byron's got a bird.